here. There's a few people that are still missing, but maybe we can get started if you have any questions, so we can at least get started. If not, then we'll wait for them. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Any questions? Why don't you wait?
On page 91 of this book, as it's explaining the 26th verse, and the section is Nirvikalpaha. It says, Sthul sharir mein ameya nahi hai. What is ameya? Is it darkness?
Ameya means disease.
Okay.
So 91, what are you reading? Sorry.
So on page 91 in the middle, there is Swamiji is giving explanation of the word nirvikalpa.
Yeah.
So he said, sthul sharir mein ame nahi, suksham sharir mein abhas nahi, और कारण शरीर में विकल्प का बीज अज्ञान नहीं. इसके पश्चात कह दिया, अहम तथा मैं सर्वव्यापक हूँ, अर्थात परिच्छिन्नता भी नहीं. I didn't completely understand that, especially because I didn't understand the word ame. You're saying that's disease. So I don't know what how and what he's trying to explain here.
A second, hold on just a second. I'm still
looking for it?
Yeah.
It's on the right side. Page
on the
90.
Right side.
Yeah, on the page 91 in the middle.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one.
Yeah, okay, so the dark letters Nirvikalpa.
Okay.
And then its explanation.
Now I got it, yeah. Okay. So what he's saying is that as we have been discussing, in our lives we face many problems, and one set of problems is the diseases in my life, the diseases that come in my life. And so this is what is called amaya, right? And so that is the amaya. Now, the nirvikalpa is associated with niramaya. So those two are part of the same family. So, vikalpa means some differences. That's what vikalpa means. Nirvikalpa means there's no differences. There is no distinction, there is no states, there is no change from one state to the other. So that is what nirvikalpa is, right? So now we go to the diseases, which is amaya. So what Swamiji is saying is that if you analyze, the diseases are associated with vikalpa. How? And in fact, he has given the three different diseases. One is the disease of the body. Why? Because the body is changing continuously. It is, the cells are changing. Every day is really a new body. We don't realize that. We all think it's the same one, even though we know I'm aging and, some things are happening, but we don't see the extent of the change. It's just changing completely. When you have a change, then diseases can come in. They can enter the system. And in fact, part of the change is really from a lesser state of disease to a higher state of disease, or vice versa. So for example, when you treat a disease, then there is a change in the body, again vikalpa, but there is also a change in the in the amaya. So what he's saying is that the nirvikalpa gives rise to amaya. Vikalpa gives rise to amaya. So nirvikalpa is niramaya. Then he goes to say that there is two other types of vikalpa. So one is the sthula sharira, which is the body. The body has its own problems. Then the mind, sukshma sharira. In the sukshma sharira, this is what is related to the word abhasa. He's already saying that. So in the sukshma sharira, you have some thoughts. And you remember we looked into this in the previous class, that abhasa is a reflection of the bhasa. So the abhasa is a reflection which is endemic to our thoughts. Our thoughts are abhasa. And because they are abhasa, they are vikalpa. Because they are changing just like the body is changing. The changes in the mind are different. They are more sukshma. They are more subtle. But they are there. Because it is vikalpa, you have diseases of the mind also. As we know very well, this is a very confusing thing that one day I am sitting there, I am very happy. And then next time my mind gets dark and I have loss of hope, and worse than that, sometimes confusion, krodha, anger, all those kinds of diseases. So the problems of the mind are also there because of the vikalpa. Then finally in the karana sharira, really in that sense, so in the Karana Sharira basically represents ignorance. Ignorance of the self is called Karana Sharira. Now, who I am is not known, and therefore you project a wrong impression. So that is the amaya of the Karana Sharira. Because there, if it was just deep sleep, which is only the total ignorance, you don't have a problem. You don't have a problem because there is no vikshepa. But it is the seed that creates the vikshepa. And so, not knowing myself, as we did in just this last class, not knowing myself creates a huge problem. Those are the ahamaya of the karana sharira. So, if you look at all the words there, that's why I want to look at the verse itself. Yeah, it's very nice, very interesting. So he says, Niramayaha, Nirabhasaha, Nirvikalpaha, Aham Atataha, Naham Deha hi Adrupaha Jnanamiti Uchyate. So there, having defined the possibilities of diseases in three phases, Sukshma Sharira, Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira and Karana Sharira. Now he says the self has none of these three. None of these three. It doesn't have the diseases of the body. That is a pure jnanam. Doesn't have the diseases of the mind. Why? Because the mind and the body and the karana sharira are based on the Atma. Atma is the very basis of the three. So like the waves of an ocean, the waves are all vikalpaha and amayaha, etc. But the basis of the waves, which is water, has none of those amayas. So in this way of looking at it, you have an understanding. Because this is what happens. You say, I am sick, or I am old, or I am dukkhi, I have problems, and I am ajnani. All these are superimposition upon yourself. So here it is saying is that we have a problem of lumping things together. And a jnani is the one that separates them very clearly. Kind of like, you say, I'm in great pain. So the doctor would say, you are in great pain, can you tell me where the pain is? So then they say, oh, my finger is hurting. Okay, so you have a pain in the finger, not in yourself, not in the rest of the body. Let's isolate it. So exactly that's what he's saying, that the amaya of the sharira is isolated. It doesn't touch the atma. So that's another way of the Brahma Vidya, based on specifics part of it. Yeah. Don't ask me any tough questions because reserve them for Swami Viditatmananda tomorrow. Yeah.
So my question is, are suicides committed because of non-acceptance of one complete self or non-understanding of true nature of oneself?
Correct.
Like the 10th man.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, what is your question?
Is this a confirmation that is that true?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so the acharyas say that this is, I think Swami Dayananji may have said that. It's a very interesting thing. Somebody had told me. He says, quite frankly, our problems are because of we are very bad counters. We are very bad at the people that really manage inventory and financial people that look at your your assets and liabilities and say everything is all pakka. I know exactly how much you have, how much you owe. There's nothing missing. And our problems are that we are very bad accountants, basically. How is that? Because essentially we are looking at life partially, not completely. I mean, Vaidinath is not here, but he had, remember he had raised this point that the science has now progressed. And so they are saying all these kinds of things, whereas this knowledge is very old, so should we not revise it? So we said no. It's like if you have a different form of mithya, different form of new kinds of waves, there's no change in the water. It is the same water that was there 1,000,000 years ago, the same water is there now. Same Atma. Same Atma for Rama, Krishna, Vyasa, Adi Sankara. It's the same jnanam. There's no difference whatsoever. And that is a very essential part of our life, and we don't count it. We don't count it. So you mentioned the 10th man example, and I think I talked a little bit about that, but let me finish that example. So there, the person who is grieving, he knows a lot about himself. I think I already mentioned that. He knows his name, his age, his parentage, his education, everything. But there is one essential thing that makes all of that irrelevant, because he's really looking for a 10th man. And he doesn't realize that he's not counting himself as part of that. So that part of the equation, that part of the accounting is missing. So this is, wisdom is not democratic. It's not like saying, I know 99 things, and so one thing that I don't know shouldn't matter. No, that makes a very big difference. Swami Dayanandji had given a very interesting example of this. He had said that he says that there was a very wise Pandit who had studied a lot, and kind of like a Renaissance man. He knew mathematics, he knew languages, everything, and he was immaculately dressed, Brahmin. He was a Brahmin, and he was a teacher of everybody and highly respected and so on. So he wanted to cross a river, and so he found a boat with a boatman, poor little fellow, not little fellow, but a poor fellow with tattered clothes, dirty, and sitting there waiting for some customers. So he says, hey, I want to cross, how much money did you take? So he says, hey, I'll take 2 rupees. So he says, okay, let's go. There was a very wide river, deep river. So he sat down, and then he started to look at this guy, and he looked so wretched compared to where he was. I'm all so well dressed and so full of knowledge, and this poor guy is tending the oars. So he says, sir, have you studied any mathematics? He said, sir, no, you know what? I was 5 years old, and I was going to go to school, but my father needed some help, so he pulled me out of school. So I don't know any mathematics. He says, my goodness, 1/4 of your life is wasted. Then he said, but you must know some languages. He said, sir, I really don't know any language. I can just talk some Bazari language, but Again, I never really studied anything. So he says, oh my God, another quarter of your life is completely wasted. Then finally he said, you must know music. He said, sir, I actually had a tendency to sing well, but you know, my wife, my parents and so on, they needed me to work. I never really developed it. So I never really learned any music. So he says, 3/4 of your life is wasted. So while they were talking, the boat sprang a leak. And so then this boatman immediately stopped the oars. He took a bucket out and started to put the water back into the river. And he was unable to do that. Then he asked the Swami, he says, can you help me? Swami says, no, I have got some nice clothes, I don't want to spoil it. So the poor guy was doing it himself, and pretty soon he knew that the water is going to take lots of water. So he said, sir, do you do any swimming? He says, no. Then he says, your entire life is lost. And this is the situation. We are so busy with our lives. I am busy, I'm doing this, and I'm learning a lot of things, and so on. But the most essential thing that we should know, that I am basically immortal, and I take myself to be immortal. The Shastra says that if you can figure this out before you die, it's beautiful. If you don't, it says Mahati Vinashti. There is a great loss. And the loss is not that you're going to be gone forever, but you have lost a great opportunity. In fact, the human life, out of all the lives, is meant for self-understanding. Because the ant cannot understand itself, the dog cannot understand itself, the birds cannot understand themselves, none of the animals can understand. They don't have the mind. Their minds are completely externally oriented. Where's my food? Where are my children? That's it. There's nothing else, not much. The human mind is not only externally oriented, but has the ability to look at itself and say, who am I? And until you do that, you cannot avoid death. Because the only thing that is not subject to death is the Atma. And if you do not understand the Atma, like this Pandit, he may be illiterate, but he could save himself. The Pandit could not save itself. So I remember that example so well from Swami Dayanji. So anyway, to complete the answer to your question, even a little bit of understanding of the self is very important, because without that, as the example of the boatman shows, you're just wasting. And Mahati Vanashti is used because taking a birth and becoming, people will say, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that is that it just takes a long time to a point where you can have some understanding of yourself. We have a couple of babies in our home, and they are helpless for a long time. Then slowly one thing or the other. And many a times they have no interest whatsoever. That life is just wasted. But it's really refreshing to see 16, 17-year-old, some of you, for example, I was talking to Naresh, or who, I forget, not Naresh, sorry. I was talking to somebody else who has, I think Krishnan. With 31-year-old, Krishnan had a 31-year-old son. And he says he's very interested And when Krishna goes back, he actually discusses, he asks him, what did you learn? It's a good test. It's a good thing. You've got a boy to ask you all that. Very fortunate. Very fortunate. Because it takes a lifetime of learning. This is not easy. So, yeah, that's what it's all about.
So my question is kind of builds a little bit about what you said, that we are born into that Manushya life, the human life is the only one when you can do an inquiry into yourself, who you are and all that, right? And they say that all the Pashus are born in Bhog Yoni. They can only experience things, but they don't have a mind to question or understand anything, right? They just, by their nature, by their vritti, just experience things. We also say that all plants and trees have life, right?
Right.
So what yoni are they in? I mean, they can not even experience what the animals can experience, and they certainly can't raise any inquiries, right?
So what the Shastra says is that the sthavaram, they're called sthavaram, jangamam and sthavaram. Jangamam means people that can move. And Jangamam means people that cannot move. Not people, but beings that cannot move. So there's some parts of the Shastra which theorizes, and I think it's a pretty good theory, that the plants are either in a part where progressively they have not developed a mind. They have some mind. For example, it is well known that if you play classical music to a plant, it grows better. And so it's like that there is some effect of other things on it. So it does have a mind, but very, very minor. There's also another view that the sthavarams are highly anesthetized because their minds can get very violent if they are not anesthetized. It is very much like, if you have a mental patient and if it is somewhat moderate or less, then you can manage it. You can allow them to go home, be under the control of the parents and so on. But supposing you have someone who is very violent either to himself, herself, or to others, then they have to be restrained. You cannot allow them even the freedom of movement. So there is a section of the Shastra, and this is really speculation, it doesn't make any difference one way or the other, that all the sthavaras are deliberately restrained. And so in the case of the violent person, the doctors will say, let us restrain this person and then treat him. So it's not as though it's a punishment. That also is a positive thing for the patient to say, I want to make sure you don't harm either yourself or anyone else, but please keep on taking these strong medicines and hopefully you'll be okay. So in the case of plants also, it is a help to them. That and even better, they are very important in generating oxygen. So this is a punya, so if they have done some kind of a papa which instigated the restraints, then at least they have an ability to neutralize that papa by being a very useful citizen of the world, because the trees are the only ones that generate oxygen. I remember reading just on that point There was a British scientist whose name I forget. So he was talking about his childhood. He says how I was so curious to know about things. And so what he did was, he used to do his own experiment, maybe with the help of the parents, I don't know. So what he would do is, he would get some live insects, either small size or big one, and put them in a glass jar and tighten the lid so there is no oxygen going in. Okay? Then he has a paper and pencil and he writes down how long they are alive. So he writes it down. So, how much oxygen is there, and because they are breathing and they are exhaling carbon dioxide, so they are depleting oxygen. There is no new oxygen coming in, and so eventually they lose their lives. And he would note it down. This one stayed open for 7 hours, this one did like that. Then he said, let me put a plant also in. He's all this young kid. He must have been 11 years old or something. So he also theorized that the plant can also die. And he put them in the sunlight. What he found was that they're not dying. They should be dying because there's a... Then he found out, he must have been told, that they do generate some oxygen to self-survive. Eventually, I think it dried out and it died. I'm not sure how. But anyway, yeah, so that's the plants have some life. So what they say, just to expand your question, there are 4 kinds of beings. So one is the plant kingdom, Sthavara. The other one is general Jangama, which is all the animals that move. Third one is human being. And the fourth one is Devas. Okay, so out of these 4, the only one that can understand who they are, that they are nothing but Ishvara itself, they are the very Paramatma, is human beings. You cannot, obviously the trees cannot do it, the animals cannot do it, and the Devatas cannot do it. Devatas, it is well written in the Shastra, well written many, many times. Why? Because they are enjoying life to such a degree that you cannot think about something better. They're saying we are okay. I remember Swami Dayananda used to say that. He says, very interesting. He said that wherever I go, he's invited by somebody, He says, wherever I go, I'm able to talk to quite a few people. So, when he's invited at some place, then they'll invite their friends. And it may not be large, but he's able to talk to some people, look in their eyes and say, yeah, they're getting something. So he had a student who was well known to Pammi and I. Her name was, anyway, her new name, it is one of those where I forget her old name, but I knew her new name. She passed away about 3 or 4 years ago. She was a Hawaiian. Her name is Saralananda. She used to come to the ashram also. Do you remember her name, Pammi? No, not Kalyani. Not Radha, not Kalyani. The one from... Yeah. Anyways, so she told Swamiji, you must come and teach in Hawaii. Swamiji, of course, was very interested. Wherever somebody wants him, he'd say, okay. In fact, we are very, very glad that he had this weakness, because when he came to the US, and I met him for the first time, and so did a number of other people. We just fell on his feet. We really thought he was a remarkable person. This kind of a teacher we are not going to find. So we told him, Swamiji, you are going to teach us a class here in, not a class, but a course. You have to start a course. He said, no, but I have a lot of people in India who want me. So we said, I don't care about India. You're not leaving US. We just held on to his feet. Do you know how many hundreds of people he disappointed? But he just came here for 2.5 years of his life. Imagine. So this Saralananda had invited Swamiji to go to Hawaii. And Swamiji agreed to it, like if somebody says. He says, out of my entire life, my complete failure was in Hawaii. He says there were a couple of people who came. Saralananda expected more, but she had invited like a couple of dozen people. But I'm just making it up a little bit. 3 people came. The next day, even those 3 people also didn't come. Saralananda was very apologetic, said, Swamiji, I'm so sorry, I tried my best. Swamiji says, you know why? It's too nice of a place. Who's going to listen to a Vedanta lecture in Hawaii? People are just enjoying cool breeze. So wonderful. So the Devatas are 1,000 times more having more fun than Hawaii. They say that just music and dance and good food. And good food is also, they don't have a tummy. Just the smell of it. This is what the descriptions are of the Devatas and Devis. And then you tell them, hey, we need you to understand what the Atma is. Says, why? We are having fun. And so they have to be brought back to the Manushya Loka. After because when you go to Hawaii, this is the thing about Hawaii, it is so expensive. You cannot stay there forever unless you are a trillionaire. And so after, if you are a normal human being, staying in a hotel, there is a little bill underneath your door. Sir, check-out time is 11 o'clock, and by the way, you owe us $3,750. It is finished, you cannot stay another week, you don't have enough money. So when the Devatas all enjoy themselves, because they are expanding their punya slowly, they have to come back to Manushya Loka. In the Manushya Loka, Sukha Dukkha is roughly 50-50. 50-50. On an average. Of course, there's some variation. There are some people who are dukhi to be born with. If you're born with some serious disease, then... so there's variations. But on an average, Sukha Dukkha is divided about 50-50. This is what Swamiji used to say. He says that if you're very happy, be aware, because this is not going to be lasting very well. There'll be some problems in your life that will... And as we have been discussing, you cannot search for God unless you are having a problem. Impossible. Swami Akhandananda makes it very, very clear. He thinks that people that are having some problems are the luckiest ones. Luckiest ones. If you're having too many problems, then also you cannot do anything. Swami Dayananda used to say that. He says, if you look at my students on a bell curve, people that are having lots of problems don't come to listen to it. People that are having lots of fun don't come to me. It's the ones that are having some fun, but they have some discomfort about their life. Who am I? What's happening? They are the right students. So yeah, out of the various creatures, these are the 4 that Shastra talks about. Anyway, when Swamiji comes tomorrow, and if you are silent and you don't ask him any questions, I am in trouble. He'll say, haven't you taught them something that they can talk or they have some questions on? No, the questions will come naturally when Swamiji is here. I'm not even sure that I can make him agree, but I think I will try. So he comes in at 1 o'clock, and hopefully join us for lunch, and then I'll talk to him and invite him for both Thursday and Friday for Satsang. So if there's no other questions, good night.
Wait.
Okay.
Sorry. If you have time, I have a question that could divulge into a long answer, I don't know. It's more Puranic than Vedantic. Are you okay with that?
Sure. I mean, I'm not an expert in Purana, but I'll make my observations with whatever I know about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing that puzzles me as I read the various different Puranas, Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, or Ramayana, or any other Puranic books, is many of the rishis who are supposed to be very learned, know a lot about themselves, may have conquered their kam, krodha, lobh, moh, etc., are very quick to anger. You know, you look at the story of Rishi Gautam and his wife Ahilya, right? So Ahilya had some indiscretions with Indra Bhagwan, and Gautam, when he came, Rishi Gautam, when he came, he cursed her to become a statue of stone, and for centuries, right, until Bhagwan Ram came and touched her, then she would recover. Same thing with Parikshit, you know, he was a very just king, he was very highly sattvic, he was very learned, and he happened to walk into this ashram of a muni who was in samadhi, and he offered him some water or something like that, right? I don't remember the exact story. Snake, yeah. And then his son cursed him and he just said, you know, Takshak will come and bite you and you will be dead in 7 days. And was the basis of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam being written, because Bhagwan Sukhdeva gave him the lecture, right? I mean, he didn't even look into what the cause was. So, and these are just two small examples there. I mean, the Puranas are full of this. So my question is, these people are so learned, they're so sattvic, they're so evolved, you know, from Atmic point of view, but they seem not to have much control on either kama or krodha. So it's kind of puzzling to me why that's the case.
So few things. The Puranas are just stories meant to teach some dharma, some lack of the avoiding adharma, etc. So so these are not Upanishads, they are stories, number one. So this is not the only thing. Number two, and this is the most prevalent view. I've read a lot about this. I mean, I don't know Puranas very well, but I've read a lot about what Mahatmas think about such Puranic stories. Okay? And the consensus of this is that, in fact, this is given in as a verse in Ashtavakra Gita. Ashtavakra Gita is a very, very advanced text, a very beautiful text. So this verse is given there. What it is, I'll lead up to it, but I'll tell you what it is. But the consensus from the Mahatmas is that the stories, Puranic stories about rishis are really rishis that are tied to having samadhi. So they are very interested in being in samadhi. Okay? So this is an indirect criticism of trying to do samadhi. This is not what our goal should be. And we have already talked about this. Part of that is that the samadhi is such a pleasant experience that anything that breaks it is a great disappointment, creating lot of upset. And the creation of the upset is due to the fact that these are still sadhakas, they are not jivan muktas. And we give them some title like Rishi. So Rishi doesn't mean that it is a jivan mukta, it means that they know a lot, as you also can. They're very learned people. We agree with that. In order to do good samadhi, you have to be very learned, no doubt about it. But they are still trying to feel that if I am in samadhi, I am in heaven, which is the biggest problem there is. Because you should, in fact, so now, I think I have it in one of the verses that I was going to come in here. Swami Akhandananda talks about this one verse from Ashtavakra Gita. And what that verse says is, the biggest problem that people have is they are trying to do samadhi. Biggest problem. Because you are a student forever and you are trying to achieve something which you are not now but will come later. Biggest problem. The Jivan Mukta doesn't need a samadhi. It is sahaja samadhi. Whether you are having a problem, not having a problem, they are happy. They can deal with problems in a way. If family needs it, you go along with it. If family doesn't need it, they are always, they know exactly what the self is. So there's no problem in trying to be in samadhi. So really, in fact, they say that, I'm just telling you, not my view. This is all Mahatma's view, and I agree with that. That our meditation, see, this is the thing, Swami Dayananji also used to say that. He says, one of the biggest problems we have, it's related to this question, is that people love being a student. Forever a student. Swamiji, I'm so happy to be studying with you. Oh, so wonderful. When is the next time you're coming? Please let me know. Swamiji says, after a while, I don't want any students. You be on your own. So this thing that I'm very... No, Swamiji, no, I don't know how to teach. And forget about teaching. What about just being yourself and just not coming to a class? No, I'm not there yet. Okay, that's fine. But is that going to continue for the rest of your life? I remember I think a wise decision that I made internally, privately to myself, is I want to be as good as a Swami. That I don't have to keep learning. If I'm not there yet, I'll be honest that I won't tell anyone that I'm not there yet, but I will know when I'm there yet. And I will not be a student. And already in my life, I don't care if anybody comes or not comes. I'm okay the way it is. So, to answer your question on this Puranic stories, this is what the Mahatmas say, that a state where you are trying to do samadhi in order to be free is a problem. You haven't solved anything. That means you're dependent on some things. And that's exactly right. If these rishis that you talk about, they are in great samadhi and something small happens, then their fall is just as dramatic as their rise. So that's the understanding that I have, because I had the same question, but I think I've read it at several places, including Mahatmas like Swami Akhandananda, who says, no, that's the explanation that is given. Yeah. Sure.
I think you're referring to yogic samadhi versus Vedantic samadhi.
No, there's no Vedantic samadhi. So the Vedantic samadhi is sahaja samadhi. So if you can call it samadhi, we don't even call it samadhi. We don't call it samadhi. We will look into this when we go to Nididhyasanam. There is a page. In fact, I tell you what. Should be, I almost remember it, yes. So there is a... this is the last one in the Nididhyasanam. You know those 15 steps that we are going to be doing. So I'll read the Hindi first. So he says, and this is a very, very short explanation, just two sides of a page. Would you know what that means? Is not worth talking about. It should be obvious. So he says, this is page 285. So he says, vritti निर्विकार होकर ब्रह्म आकार हो जाए, इससे वृत्ति का सर्वथा विस्मरण हो जाए, तो ये समाधि ही ज्ञान कही जाती है. So he says that samadhi, where the attempt to do samadhi and being in samadhi is not needed, and you are already with Brahma Akara, is called Jnanam. So the end of our effort is not Samadhi, it is Jnanam, self-knowledge. So Vritti Jnanam. So in that sense, the Vedantic Samadhi, there is the only Vedantic Samadhi, and Swami Dayanandji had really made this very, very clear. I mean, we spent a lot of time on this, that a specific samadhi at one place is not the real samadhi. Samadhi means that you are in touch with yourself no matter where you are, what you're doing. Anyway, this is the real stuff, and so we'll touch on it a little bit. But then you read the lives of the Mahatmas like Uriya Babaji and so on, they'll all say yes. This samadhi doesn't mean that you're just sitting at one place. In fact, if you're sitting in one place trying to do samadhi, you are not there yet. Samadhi can be, he used to talk about that these Mahatmas, they were just playing with children. And some of them were building a bandh on the Ganga. And they were just toiling away, happy people, singing. They're done. If somebody insults them, it doesn't make any difference. This is a story about a Mahatma who was sitting there, and there's this woman. So he was having a satsang with lots of people. And so this one woman came up, and she was an angry woman with, I don't know what had happened to her life or something. And I don't know whether she was personally mad at this Mahatma, or I don't know, I have to read it again to see. But she stuck out at shouting, you're a false person. You're a false person. You're making fool of others. And you should be ashamed of yourself. So everybody said, Swamiji, she's talking to you, and you should not tolerate this. So Swamiji said, no, she must be talking. He told her, no, you must be talking about somebody else, right? She says, no, I'm talking about you. You. Swamiji said, no, you're not talking to me. He is talking to somebody else. So this woman got so frustrated and said, so then he told everybody, she's talking to my body, mind, intellect. That's not who I am. I don't mind. Let her do anything she wants to. Why are you getting upset about it? This is a real incident. In this book, Pavana Prasanga, which I really, if you know Hindi, I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful, because what I really like about this book is, this was gifted to me by Swami Chinmayananda of Chinmaya Mission, that it's a little bit of an autobiography. More importantly, it's a biography of all the Mahatmas that he has met. And it is not just their lives, that person was born on such and such time, it's not like that. It's their views, their ideas, their conclusions. Fascinating, just fascinating. Anyway, it's a very beautiful book, and I think, one of the things I found from that book was there are literally thousands of Mahatmas in India at any one time. Thousands. May even be hundreds of thousands. Not just a few that are sitting there. We only know about our own teachers, Swami Chinmayananda, Swami Dayanandji, and Swami Vidyatmananda, a few people here and there. They are in every third or fourth village somewhere. Not promoting themselves, not teaching, but happy as anything. It's completely understood, the whole thing. And if somebody goes to them, they will say, you want to learn? Okay, sit down. Otherwise, they're just very sitting there. It's okay. That was a great revelation. Okay. Now I think we'll call it a day. Thank you. Good night. We'll see you tomorrow.